over there for 35 minutes. You can do it this way.
Like Frank said, I was on the USS West Virginia, so I was in the deck force. Here is the ship after it was torpedoed and bombed. Pearl Harbor is shallow. This is set right on the mud. This inboard here is the Tennessee. They was trying to get the Tennessee with the torpedoes and go under us. We received 9 torpedoes and 2 bombs. As this sketch shows where each one of them torpedoes hit and where the 2 bombs hit. The Tennessee only received 2 bombs. This is a picture of one of the torpedoes they used. They manufactured on the end of the torpedo where they could put wood. Most torpedoes would go down and they'd go at about 15 feet. But with the shallow water, what have you, so they invented this so they'd rise to the surface where they wouldn't go under. The night before we attacked, these 3 boys was over at Pearl City at the beer joint having beer and having a good time. They were down below decks. They never come out. They were down underneath there, all watertight, they couldn't get out. They lived for 16 days after the attack. You could hear them. They had guards coming aboard ship when they was working on it. And these guys down there had a piece of metal or something and it was knocking on the bulkhead so you could find them. Well, then we didn't have no way of getting down there or getting them out. For 16 days they lived down there. They had water, they had food, but they run out of oxygen. I'll pass these around so you can see them. And also when you look at this picture now, you can kind of visualize, we wasn't always looking this old, we were young too. This 3-inch gun here, which is what it was passed around, is an anti-aircraft gun. That was my station. We had it forward and aft, we had 16-inch guns. The projector stands this tall, weighs 2,100 pounds. They could fire from here to Cloverdale and hit a room about this size with that shell. So, I mean, it was quite, but they fired, we had cockroaches on board ship. And they fired these 2 guns forward and aft. The ship would move over 6 feet in the water when they fired that way. You'd kill the cockroaches for about 3 decks. But they worked their way back up. I was on there until the fire burned out. We had our captain was up here on the bridge. He got strapped up, killed him. He lasted about 15 minutes after the attack started. Lieutenant White then was there with him. Dick Fisk, the Marine bugler, and he wouldn't let them take him off the bridge. Lieutenant White stayed in the Navy, become a captain later on. He stood about 6'6", feet on him about like that. He stayed there till the shoes burnt off his feet. So afterward, nobody had shoes that size. So his wife was there, she had no duty, so they sent her back. She found a pair of shoes his size, but you can only ship so much weight in a package. So she had to send the shoes in 2 different packages. He received 1 shoe, 3 months later he received the other one. We used to call him snowshoes, not to his face. And here in about '82, we had a reunion in Charleston, West Virginia. Come in, and he signed the log captain. When I go ski this boat's and he says, "That isn't your name." He sketched it out. And what is it? He wrote down snowshoes. The next reunion, 2 years later, we met in Tacoma, and he came in and he signed his name, Snowshoes. Real nice gentleman. I sat at the table and had dinner with him and his wife, and talked sea stories. I think he's gone now. He lived in Florida quite a while. He was up in his 80s then. We had Dean Darrell, who was on board ship, and got blown off of the ship, was picked up by a motor launch. And he was hurt, so they took him to the hospital and patched him up, sent him back to duty. He would sleep anywhere for 15, 20, 24 hours at a time. this wasn't normal, so they sent him back over and they x-rayed him again. This time went in from the side. He had a jack bullet in his heart, and he was still going around. So they sent him back here to the United States, and they told him in May, they said, now this heart surgery is a new thing. You might get about a 50-50 chance to recover on this. There was a little nurse there, and he said, well, if I come out of this, will you go out with me? Now, this is May, and I think June or July they got married, and he lived for 50 more years. He died right after the 50th anniversary. Real nice family. After they told us to abandon ship, I went over to Tennessee, and I helped pull off some life rafts. There was a Marine and another sailor with me, and we were swimming over the side. When I went through boot camp, one of the qualifications, you had to be able to swim that pool back and forth and carry a pack a lot of times. Here there was kids down there that didn't even know how to swim. But I remember when I went through boot camp, this one kid, he come from a fairly wealthy family, didn't know how to swim, so he gave the instructor $20. Okay, you know how to swim. $20? We only made $21 the whole month was in there. That's what our pay was, $21 a month. So when that's twice a month, you know what you got. If you got a chit out, you didn't have much left. So I went, an officer hollered to get the hell out of there. And as I drove over the side, a bomb landed, killed him and 2 enlisted men. On our ship, we lost, I think it was 107 men, 4 of them officers and the rest enlisted men. On the fantail of our ship, here, when the Arizona went up, body parts of these boys on the Arizona landed on the ship we were on. It blew up. They picked them up for quite a few days later on. Anyway, as I went over the side, where the Arizona blew up, they'd just taken on a bunch of fuel, ammunition, and everything else. And here this fuel was on top of the water burning. The Tennessee started its engines, put its screws on, was keeping the fire away from us. But we still had that muck. And when we went through that, it is muck, it's mud. That old bunker fuel is worse than molasses. It's thick. You can't wipe it off. You have to scrape it off. I went out there to Fort Island, big hangar here, and I went in there, but with all these ships damaged and down, that hangar was full of boys. And they said, well, they sent me down here, which was officers' quarters. When I went into the officers' quarters, the officers' wives helped us clean up. And I went back to Tennessee that night. There was a buddy of mine, him and I went through boots together. And I spent the night there. Then I went back to Fleet Landing the next morning. On December 7th, the morning we attacked, about 5 minutes to 8 when it happened. Milton East, a buddy of mine, him and I was getting ready to go ashore. And we're not going to make the first Liberty boat because the boys go to church and all that. So we went, we were shining our shoes. And they sounded the attack. I took my shoes and put them on my locker. I never saw them again. And I was 3 weeks before I could get a pair of shoes. And I wore those thongs. We call them Japanese moccasins. And before I could get a pair of shoes, I was kind of tired of them then. Captain White, when he lost his shoes, he went down to Carpenter, and the carpenter cut a shoe out, wooden piece, fit his foot. Then they nailed a piece of canvas over the top. But on them steel decks, when you walked on it, he was making so much noise, the animals said, oh no. So they got what you might call rope, we called it line, and nailed it across the bottom so it would quiet it down. And I went on, we went over Fleet Landing that next day, and Milt and I, and there were a couple other buddies, and here's the whole list of ships. I said, what ship did you get? We look at me, he said, hey, I got a buddy on the Lexington. Well, the Lexington was an aircraft carrier. And this is one reason the Japanese did not come back in and attack us again. Our aircraft carriers weren't in the harbor. They didn't know where they're at. So I went to the Lex, got on it. We went out to sea. We had a run on Bougainville. The torpedo planes went out, and the Jap ships there. They were shallow draft. They dropped the torpedo just went right under their ships and just right up the bank. Because they were shallow draft and we're set deep. So we came back. We came in, we never got a hit. The Jap plane tried to get us, 2-engine bomber. And when it came in, all the ships on the left was firing all the anti-aircraft guns. And you could see the Japs just bend over the seat. When you can see the tracers, about every fifth one is a tracer where you can watch it go right into the nose of this airplane. And they're coming right at us. And finally, it veered off just a little bit aft the fantail that hit the water and exploded. On the flight deck was the torpedo planes, the fighters, and everything. The boys, the radio men and the pilots, all sitting in these planes. Well, if it hit right in there, it wiped all them out. So, for 2 weeks after that, we went down. We'd have chow. There was a brick of ice cream and a pack of cigarettes that these officers brought us. We spent 3 months out there. We got a little hungry. They run out of a lot of food. They had no potatoes left, no vegetables hardly. They boiled rice and they cooked it in the morning, that was your mush. They boiled rice at noon, that was your potatoes. And then they had Spanish rice for supper. And we ate tuna for 3 weeks. I eat rice today, but I'm not particularly fond of tuna. We got back in and we loaded up again. What time did we got on this?
We've got about 20 minutes yet.
Okay.
Leave you talking no more about it than I do.
Hey, that's the whole
No,
point.
it won't fit. So, we came back in, loaded on up, and went back out. We got in the Battle of the Coral Sea. The Lex went down in the Battle of the Coral Sea, but with our planes and that, a couple others, the Japanese had a big armada heading to Australia. They were going to take Australia. We knocked aircraft, destroyers, and everything out. That broke off the attack. I spent 4 hours in the water before I got picked up. Swimming. I saw a ship out there. They'd come by you in the motor launch. Oh, he's doing all right, just let him go. When I got to the Anderson destroyer, I got shoved down in the water 3 times. Because I wasn't alone trying to get up there. So finally, when she rolled back, I put my feet against the bulkhead, threw both arms back, put them in the air. Guy caught me one on each hand and heaved me in the middle of the deck almost as far from here to there. One shoved a cigarette in my mouth, another shoved a cup of coffee in my hand. Now, a lot of the students ask us, were you afraid? Were you scared? I guess we all were afraid sometimes, scared sometimes. But you used to think how monotonous it is going through these drills, doing it over and over, your gunnery practice over and over. But it paid off. During the action, you never even thought about that. You did what you were supposed to do. That night, well, I remember on the 1.1 on Lexington, if it misfired, you took a lanyard or a rope, whatever you want to call it, you had to wrap around it, and it was so tight, you put your leg and pull it before you could get it open. You had to leave it set a half hour, then you'd catch a shell and throw it in the water. Big boy from Texas reached under there with his hand like this, just pulled it back, caught it through the shell over the side. Just as cool and calm as you can be. That night on the destroyer, he was down under the stacks, the shock set in, he was crying like a baby. So I mean, you just do it over and over, just like you're studying. If you do it long enough, you'll understand what you're doing when it comes to you. Okay, Joe, I can say some more about what you get out of. Joe was below decks and I was topside.